What this hunter saw while hunting wild boar is the stuff of nightmares. The following story is loosely based off true events. Joe was a hunter, and though he had been deer hunting and occasionally provided turkey for Thanksgiving, Joe mostly loved to hunt wild boar. For those that aren't familiar, wild boar are a serious problem in the United States. Not only do they tear up the land and eat almost anything, they birth at an extremely rapid rate, having as many as 1 to 12 piglets per birth in as little as 4 months. Currently in the United States, there's over 10 million feral pigs across the country. And when they say feral, they mean feral. These things are aggressive, and they'll attack at a moment's notice. So it's really no surprise that the Department of Fish, Game, and Wildlife in numerous states allow people to legally hunt them with almost zero restrictions. In most states, including Joe's, it's illegal to hunt animals using a thermal, except of course, wild boar and coyote. So Joe, having bought one within the last week, was excited to put it to the test. He recently had been scouting an area that he knew would be perfect for a night hunt. It was a very accessible spot that would allow him to get his truck into the woods with ease, and the spots were easy to find so he could set up quickly and be overlooking the entire clearing. The night started out quiet with no movement at all where he had thought there would be a ton of action. So mostly, he just tinkered with the settings on his new scope. Being impatient, he had seen some deer, but it wasn't that time of year. Deer weren't in season, so he decided to pick up and move spots to a new one. This spot he had seen a couple weeks earlier, and with the move, it would give him a chance to cover some different area with his new scope. He had been scanning the woods for an entire hour when it finally dawned on him. There was virtually no animals whatsoever in this patch of woods. No birds chirping, no rabbits moving, no owls hooting. The deer he had watched earlier were now hundreds of yards away. Why was this spot so dead at night, but so alive during the day, he asked himself. He had set up around 10 p.m. It was now 2 a.m., and he hadn't seen a thing. So he started thinking about packing up, possibly even setting up a target to send a couple practice rounds downrange to make sure his new scope was functioning properly. The deer he had seen earlier were almost 400 yards off. He had just finished putting everything in his pack when suddenly he heard a crunch in the direction that he had come from. Joe immediately drew his firearm to his shoulder and panned his scope in the direction of the noise. Now keep in mind, his scope is not night vision. It's actually a thermal, so at night it produces a black and white image of the landscape and any creatures that are moving through it. So upon scanning the area, he notices what he believes to be a small bear pushing its way through thick foliage. The bear looks to be about 200 yards off. He proceeded to adjust the range a little bit and zoom in to get a better look at the creature. Moments later, he's able to do some fine-tuning and get a better look at what he saw. As he gazes through the high-powered thermal, he suddenly jolts when he realizes that it was no bear. It was a man. Initially, he was so low and hunched over that Joe thought it was a young bear scavenging for food. Is that a game warden? Joe asked himself. It can't be. I would have seen the headlights coming in. Nobody has come up that 2-track. I surely would have seen them from where I was sitting, he thought to himself. If not the game warden, then who? A lost hiker? Where could he have walked from? I'm 30 miles away from anything and on public lands. These are the thoughts racing through Joe's head. He was just about to call out to the gentleman when he adjusted his sights again and noticed that the man was naked. What the? Baffled, he continues gazing through his scope. No shoes, no pants. He had virtually nothing on. Disturbed by the man's movements, they were quick and sudden, almost as if he was a squirrel or something. Very twitchy, grabbing at branches around him while sniffing and palming at a tree in front of him. Then he came to the realization, was that my tree? The tree that I had been leaning against earlier? Joe thought to himself. The thought terrified him. Can this man actually smell his scent? He stands there baffled, peering down his sight when the creature does something that sends chills down his spine, and he still has nightmares about it to this day. Suddenly, the man squats, placing both hands on the ground in between his legs, and stares straight up towards the sky, similar to a wolf mid-howl. Baffled, he can do nothing but sit there and watch, and that's when he heard it. Coming from that direction, a very desperate female voice cries out, "Help! I'm lost! Please help me!" There was a long pause, but neither Joe nor the creature moved a muscle. A warmth of fear swept over him like he had never felt before. He gazed on, crosshairs fixed to the ground in front of the man. Joe has been hunting all of his life, and aiming his gun at another person went against everything he had been taught about firearms. Were they lost? He asked himself. Was this guy a hiker who got lost and went crazy out here? Why was his voice so feminine? Then again the voice cries out, "Help, please! I can't walk!" And that's when Joe realized it was bullshit. His adrenaline began really flowing. Not only could this creature walk, when he first come crawling in on all fours, naked through the brush, it was no problem. "That's a damn trap," Joe said to himself. No doubt about it, whatever this creature was, it was trying to lure him in. And not only that, it was doing so pretending to be a damsel in distress. Luckily, the lack of activity beforehand allowed him to pack his things. He may have left a hat behind, maybe even a sitting pad, but at the time, he didn't give a shit. He took his eyes off the creature for just a split second while he put his pack on and buckled it in the front, quickly grabbing for his rifle afterwards. And to his horror, the creature was in the exact same position, but staring in his direction, with what seemed to be a slight smile on its face. As he gazed through the thermal, it has the effect of making animals' eyes white. How the hell did it hear me put my gear on, Joe thought. It must have been almost 200 yards away. As he looked through the scope at the creature's glowing eyes, he decides to yell, "Fuck off!" Immediately upon doing this, the cryptid stood upright, and Joe realized just how tall and slender this thing was. He was easily 6 feet tall and grossly lean. He then began running in long strides in Joe's direction, but he only made it about 20 meters when he instinctively sent a round sailing over its head into the brush behind him. The dude was freaky as hell, but he hadn't really threatened him up to that point. What would he tell the cops? He was unwilling and unready to shoot another man that day. After the blast, it stopped dead in its tracks and quickly hunched down on all fours. "The next one will fuck you up. Go away." Joe had his sights set on center mass of the creature, his eyes just above the grass like a cat hunting its prey. Joe was trembling with fear. His voice cracked on the last warning. He was terrified. The standoff only lasted about a minute, but it seemed like an eternity. Then suddenly, he bolted to the tree line. With such speed, Joe could barely keep him in his sights. So much for not being able to walk, thought Joe. As it disappeared into the brush, Joe sent another round high in its direction. After racking another round, he attempts to load a fresh mag, but drops it. He doesn't even bother to look for it. He just wants to get the hell out of there. His truck wasn't far, so he began moving hastily towards it. He could hear the creature screeching in a weird sound. He couldn't tell if it was laughing or crying. He runs down the trail and arrives at his truck out of breath. He tosses his pack in the back seat and his rifle right next to him as he hightailed out of there. He'd never see the creature again. So I hope y'all enjoyed that story, kind of taking it back to my roots on that one. I love telling stories, also somewhat allegedly true encounters with cryptids. And that was a good one. So that's why I told it. I'm kind of going to go back to that. A friend suggested that maybe I should, just to keep things kind of different and moving in the right direction. It has been kind of tricky to keep telling stories like that around Bigfoot, Wendigo, skinwalkers, with everything that's going on nowadays with aliens and all that stuff. So I saw an opportunity. Let me know what you think, if you enjoyed the story or not. Also, what do you think it was? Wendigo, skinwalker, or rake? Let me know in the comments what y'all think. Be watching. I'm going to go live soon. And I got a lot more posts on deck. Stay in the love, stay in the light, be kind to others as always. Manifest greatness. And stay tuned. I am out.